You can begin.
Hello and welcome to CPUC's informational webinar, Wildfire Safety and Regulatory Oversight. I'm Hope Chrisman from the Community Partnerships team in the External Affairs Division at the CPUC. Joining me today are my colleagues Heather Iwamoro and Chris Moore, along with our supervisor Stephanie Green. Together, we'll be moderating today's session. Next slide. Before we begin, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the community partnership team that organized today's webinar. Our team, comprised of local government and community outreach liaisons, is dedicated to engaging and educating California's local governments and communities about CPUC's programs and initiatives. We foster collaboration between state and local communities to ensure that diverse voices are included in the CPUC's decision-making process. Next slide. Our local government and community outreach liaisons build and maintain strong relationships with local governments, community-based organizations, and other key stakeholders. We provide timely information to increase awareness of CPUC's initiatives and guide you, in actively participating in shaping policies that benefit your communities. Please feel free to reach out to a liaison anytime you have questions or concerns about initiatives at the CPUC. We are here to ensure transparency and foster meaningful collaboration. Next slide. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the CPUC's role in wildfire safety, regulation, investigations, PSPS compliance, as well as wildfire mitigation plans. Next slide. To start, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Green, Program and Project Supervisor for the Community Partnership Team in the External Affairs Division. Stephanie will share a few opening remarks. Stephanie?
Thank you all for coming today. As we have all seen, wildfires in California have grown in number, size, and intensity, and no longer occur in forested landscapes far away from people and their communities, but have become urban phenomena. And unfortunately, there is no wildfire season. They are now year-round events. Since the 2017 and 2018 wildfires that deeply impacted our state, California has developed policies to reduce utility-involved wildfires and created a framework to address the complex nature of wildfire risk. California is the first state that requires investor-owned electric utilities to prepare and implement comprehensive wildfire mitigation plans that include strategies such as infrastructure hardening, vegetation management, and situational awareness devices like cameras and sensors to reduce the risk of wildfires. At the CPUC, we are already asking if these strategies are enough, and are there other measures that we should be considering? Our goal for today's webinar is to help you understand the CPUC's role in reducing wildfire risk and to shed light on some of the regulations and policies the CPUC has developed to protect consumers and the environment and to ensure that Californians have access to safe and reliable utility infrastructure and services. Today's speakers from our Safety and Enforcement Division and our Safety Policy Division will present information about CPUC's wildfire-related oversight responsibilities and what they do to mitigate wildfire risk. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand it back over to Hope.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next slide. Next slide. Now I would like to introduce Coco Tomasian, Program Manager for the Safety Management Systems Branch in the Safety Policy Division. Coco is a licensed professional engineer in California with nearly 15 years of experience in utility regulation, and he's been at the forefront of utility wildfire policy issues in the state for the past decade. This experience ranges from the development of the Commission's High Fire Threat District map to the establishment of the first ever wildfire mitigation plan requirements, and the initial launch and stand-up of the recently formed Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety, where he worked before rejoining the CPUC in 2023. Welcome, Coco.
Thank you, Hope.
Good morning. As Hope mentioned, my name is Coco Tomasian. I'm a program manager in the CPUC's Safety Policy Division. The Safety Policy Division provides advisory support to the Commission's decision makers on various matters related to safety. Next slide, please. Today, I'm here to speak with you about one of these areas, which is the regulatory process around electric utility wildfire mitigation plans, or WMPs, as you'll commonly hear them referred to. I'll provide you with an overview of the wildfire mitigation plans, what they are, why they are filed, who files them, and I'll also explain the roles and responsibilities of the agencies responsible for implementing and overseeing the WMPs. And finally, I'll present some information to you about how my team at the CPUC tracks the implementation of these plans over time. Next slide. So let's begin the discussion with a high-level overview of the wildfire mitigation plans. Next slide, please. Since the occurrence of several catastrophic wildfires in the San Diego area in the fall of 2007, the equipment of electrical utilities that the CPUC regulates has been implicated in some of the most devastating wildfires in our state's history. The images shown here depict just some of the devastation and impacts from these fires. In response to this growing risk, the California legislature enacted several measures following the catastrophic wildfires in 2017 through 2019. The legislature passed Senate Bill 901 in 2018 and its successor, Assembly Bill 1054, as well as AB 111 in 2019. Collectively, these bills establish numerous provisions related to addressing wildfire risks associated with electric utility infrastructure. First, the bills added specific requirements for electrical corporations to submit WMPs designed to reduce the risk of utility-related catastrophic wildfire, and included detailed provisions for the content to be contained within these filings. Additionally, these bills created a new state agency, the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety, or Energy Safety for short. In the next few slides, I'll explain some of the requirements established by these bills and the responsibilities that the CPUC and Energy Safety have in regards to implementing them. Next slide, please. Here, I'd like to briefly highlight some of the statutory authorities created by the bills I mentioned previously. Public Utilities Code 8386 establishes that each electrical corporation must construct, maintain, and operate its infrastructure in a manner that will minimize the risk of catastrophic wildfire posed by its lines and equipment. This code also establishes that WMPs must be filed annually. However, beginning in 2020, the code mandated that WMP filings cover a 3-year period and that Energy Safety could permit the annual filings to be updates to the 3-year WMPs, provided that each utility files a comprehensive 3-year WMP at least once in that 3-year period. Paragraph C of PU Code 8386 specifies 23 discrete elements that must be addressed by the WMP filings, which I'll cover in more detail on the next slide. Public Utilities Code 8386.3 establishes the responsibilities of the CPUC and Energy Safety in the implementation of these statutory requirements. Energy Safety reviews WMPs and may approve, request modifications, or deny each utility's WMP. If Energy Safety approves a WMP, it is the Commission's responsibility to ratify such actions. Energy Safety then oversees utilities' compliance with the WMP. If Energy Safety determines a utility is not in compliance with its approved WMP, it may recommend that the Commission pursue an enforcement action against the utility for noncompliance with its approved plan. The Commission then, through its regulatory authority, may assess penalties on utilities if they fail to substantially comply with their plans. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, there are 23 requirements specified in the Public Utilities Code 8386C. While all elements are important and must be included in a WMP for Energy Safety's approval, Some key components are bolded here because they're particularly critical in their significant impact on public safety. These elements include description of preventative strategies and programs to reduce wildfire risks, an establishment of metrics to evaluate program performance, protocols for implementing and coordinating PSPS while understanding that the goal is to reduce its use, details of key programs such as vegetation management, asset inspections, and system hardening, a listing of wildfire risks and drivers of those risks, including how the utility prioritizes them, and also finally, last but not least, a disaster and emergency response preparedness plan. Next slide, please. So now that we've briefly discussed the history that led us to the requirements for filing WMPs and highlighted some of the details that must be provided in these filings, it's important to understand who all are required to file WMPs. In short, all entities that own and operate electric infrastructure in California technically must file WMPs. Yes, this even includes publicly owned or municipal utilities. However, the authority for establishing WMP requirements, as well as reviewing and approving plans for municipal utilities, belongs to a governor-appointed body known as the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board, which is a separate entity that I won't be covering in this presentation. With respect to the CPUC's and energy safety's jurisdiction, the statutory requirements I covered previously apply to electrical corporations. Electrical corporations include investor-owned utilities, or IOUs, and independent transmission operators, or ITOs. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the three largest IOUs in the state, which include Pacific Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. But there are also three small and multi-jurisdictional utilities subject to these requirements, and those include Pacific Corp, serving the northernmost portion of the state, Liberty Utilities, providing service in the Sierra Nevada region near Lake Tahoe, and Bear Valley Electric Service, a small utility in the San Bernardino Mountains, serving the Big Bear Lake region. All of these IOUs and their service territories are shown on the map to the left. The ITOs are not displayed on this map, as they are transmission-only electrical corporations with no end-use customers. These corporations have few assets and small territorial footprints compared to the large investor-owned utilities and small and multi-jurisdictional utilities in California. Nevertheless, since they meet the statutory definition of an electrical corporation, ITOs are also required to file WMPs. Therefore, there are a total of 9 electrical corporations that file WMPs and are subject to the various requirements I outlined earlier. Next slide, please. Next, I'd like to walk you through the basic review and approval process for WMPs and highlight some of the key factors considered in the evaluation as well as the overall workflow. Next slide. With the statutory, while the statutory requirements outline the minimally required information in WMPs, those requirements don't contain enough detailed information regarding the structure, format, level of detail, or other elements necessary in a WMP filing to facilitate an efficient and effective review or ensure a WMP is robust and comprehensive. This is where energy safety supplements the statutory requirements by publishing a series of guidelines which provide further instructions and expectations for utilities in preparing their WMP filings. For the 2023 through 2025 WMP cycle, which was the most recent, Energy Safety produced a series of guidelines to provide detailed expectations for the WMPs, as well as additional documentation on its maturity model, which serves as a tool to monitor and assess whether utilities are improving or maturing their ability to assess and respond to catastrophic wildfire risk over time. The technical guidelines include detailed information about the substantive content expected to be included in WMP filings. They outline the many charts, graphs, exemplar formulas, and explanatory text the utilities are expected to include in the WMPs, as well as the format and structure of the document itself. The process guidelines outline energy safety's process for disposition of WMPs and details the public participation process and submission requirements. These guidelines remained in effect for the 2023 through 2025 WMP 3-year cycle. Energy Safety will release an updated submission schedule each year and may amend these guidelines as necessary according to its procedures for issuance of guidelines that are detailed in the government code. The process guidelines do not address the substantive content of the WMPs. As I mentioned earlier, those are found in the technical guidelines. For the upcoming 2026 through 2028 WMP cycle, Energy Safety published a new set of these guidelines on February 24th of this year, with the first 2026 through 2028 comprehensive WMP filings expected to arrive in April and staggered through the end of July every several weeks. Next slide, please. So Energy Safety's evaluation of WMPs is generally based on the following criteria. First is completeness, which is an assessment of whether the utility comprehensively responds to the statutory requirements contained in the Public Utilities Code, as well as Energy Safety's guidelines. Next, technical and programmatic feasibility and effectiveness, which pertains to Energy Safety's assessment of whether the proposed initiatives are technically feasible and effective in addressing the risks that exist in that utility service territory. It also includes an assessment of whether the proposed initiatives are programmatically feasible for the specific utility given its maturity and progress to date. Resource use efficiency evaluates whether the proposed initiatives are an efficient use of utility resources and focus on achieving the greatest risk reduction with the most efficient use of funds and workforce resources. For demonstrated year-over-year progress, the utility must demonstrate sufficient progress on the objectives and targets reported in its previous plan. Forward-looking growth assesses whether the utility demonstrates a clear action plan to continue reducing utility-related ignitions and the scale, scope, and frequency of its public safety power shutoff or PSPS events. In addition, for this criterion, Energy Safety evaluates whether the utility sufficiently focuses on long-term strategies to build the overall maturity of its wildfire mitigation capabilities while reducing the reliance on shorter-term strategies such as PSPS or enhanced vegetation management. Performance metrics are used by Energy Safety to evaluate the extent to which a utility's WMP is driving performance outcomes in its service territory in terms of both leading and lagging indicators of wildfire risk, PSPS risk, and other direct and indirect consequences of wildfire and PSPS, including the potential unintended consequences of wildfire mitigation work. And finally, targets. Targets are initiatives or are the quantitative commitments that utilities set for specific initiatives in their WMPs. Utilities report progress towards completing the targets in their approved WMP through quarterly reporting, which we'll discuss in a little more detail later. Targets track the utility's pace of activity completion as laid out in the WMP, but do not track the efficacy of its activities. The primary use of these targets is to track the utility's completion of the initiatives in its approved WMP over time. Next slide, please. So Energy Safety has the following options regarding its evaluation process. After reviewing each utility's WMP, Energy Safety can approve or deny it. Before a WMP decision is finalized, a draft decision will be issued. Here, it is important to note that between the draft and final decision, there is an opportunity for amending a decision. The decision will also generally include areas for continued improvement, or ACIs, to be addressed in upcoming WMP submissions, for example, in the following year. These ACIs represent issues that Energy Safety would like to see a utility improve upon in subsequent years, but isn't considered a critical enough issue to prevent it from approving a WMP. If energy safety does identify a critical issue, then it requires such issues to be addressed immediately before proceeding with its review and disposition. The revision notice is the mechanism used to accomplish this. If energy safety issues a revision notice to a utility, that utility is required to modify its WMP to address the issues identified by energy safety and resubmit before the evaluation process can move forward. This delays and restarts the review process. Energy safety may issue a revision notice for any of the reasons you see listed here, which include insufficient or inadequate information, failure to remedy ACIs from previous years, not adhering to submission requirements, or other issues potentially impacting safety. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll see a process flow diagram that conveys the full WMP evaluation process, which I'll now walk you through. You'll notice that the diagram is color-coded to show the respective party acting in each step of the process. Green boxes represent actions of energy safety. Gold boxes, the actions of the utilities. Orange boxes, the actions of you, the public. And the blue boxes, the actions of the commission. Starting in the upper left in the green box, guidelines are issued by energy safety to provide a framework for the utilities to submit their WMPs. Next, utilities submit their WMPs in accordance with the guidelines. And moving to the right, following its review, energy safety reaches a decision point and either approves, denies, or issues a revision notice if it finds a WMP has critical issues, which then restarts that submission process as we discussed earlier. This is a decision point signified by the yellow box. Once a decision is reached by energy safety, it will issue a draft decision, which is subject to public comment. Following public comment, a final decision will be issued by energy safety. And following the issuance of a final decision, my staff at the CPUC will issue a draft resolution to ratify energy safety's action. This draft resolution will also be subject to public comment, after which a final resolution will be published and placed on the agenda for a commission voting meeting, at which point the 5 commissioners will vote on it. An important note that isn't reflected in this diagram is that my staff work closely with energy safety staff during the WMP review period. During that time, CPUC staff conduct our own parallel review of the WMPs. We coordinate on issues and findings discovered and provide such feedback directly to energy safety to help inform their decision-making process. Next slide, please. Before closing my presentation, I want to take an opportunity to explain and demonstrate to you all how we are leveraging the wealth of data and information received through this WMP process to gain insights into the progress California's utilities are making towards addressing wildfire risk and how we're endeavoring to foster transparency on these issues for you, the public that we serve. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, when we were discussing energy safety's WMP evaluation criteria, one of the critical pieces of information provided in WMPs are targets. As a reminder, targets are quantitative commitments that utilities set for specific initiatives in their WMPs. Utilities report progress towards completing the targets in their approved WMP through quarterly filings referred to as quarterly data reports, or QDRs. There are 2 primary types of data products that are included in the QDR: tabular and spatial data. Energy safety requires utilities to submit tabular and spatial data that shows the progress of WMP implementation. This data enables data-supported decisions that are faster, more consistent, and more transparent. Energy safety also creates and maintains the data guidelines, which are used by the utilities when putting together these data reports. These are similar to the WMP guidelines I discussed earlier, but are tailored and specific for these data submissions. This data aids the Commission in performing our oversight tasks related to WMPs and utility wildfire risk mitigation efforts in general. The figure on the right shows the energy safety docket for electrical data. The link just below the figure will take you directly to that web page. Most of the tabular QDR data can be found here. The spatial QDR data is submitted confidentially to energy safety and is provided to the CPUC through our existing Memorandum of Understanding between the two agencies, which allows for the sharing of confidential data and information. Next, I'll show you how we use some of the tabular data in the Safety Policy Division to provide publicly available resources for visualizing this data. Next slide, please. My team in the Safety Policy Division utilizes the tabular QDR data in numerous ways. This data can be thought of as a roll-up of the spatial data. In other words, it's summarized at an aggregate level. The QDRs are submitted 4 times for each year, as you may likely surmise from its name, on a quarterly basis. Energy Safety is currently working on updating its data guidelines, which may include an added annual data submission requirement. Nevertheless, as it currently stands, there are 15 different data tables in the most recent QDRs. Some tables in the tabular QDR outline the quarterly progress of utilities in achieving their annual WMP initiative targets, which they set in the WMPs, as well as the costs of this mitigation work. SPD utilizes these tables to track the progress of these mitigation initiatives and the costs of implementing them where they are reported. These data are specifically useful for the development of our Implementation of Wildfire Mitigation Plan dashboard, a recent addition to the CPUC website, which outlines implementation progress and costs of select mitigation initiatives that primarily target reduction of ignitions and asset failures. Currently, the dashboard includes data covering 2023 through 2024 for PG&E, Southern California Edison, and SDG&E. The initiatives included are primarily in the following categories: system hardening, which include things like undergrounding, covered conductor installation, and fuse replacements; asset inspections, which include routine inspections required by regulation, as well as advanced inspection programs, including those conducted by use of drones, LiDAR, and other remote sensing equipment; vegetation management, which include routine and enhanced vegetation inspection and remediation programs; and situational awareness, which includes efforts such as installation of weather stations, cameras, and fault detection devices. For each row in this dashboard, if you hover your mouse over the progress bars, it will open a tooltip box that contains additional information about that specific activity, which includes a brief description of what the initiative is, the name of the activity as described in the utility's WMP, a brief description of the initiative's objective and how it's intended to address wildfire risk, its completion status, the units of measure, for example, miles installed, number of trees removed, etc., its annual target in the WMP, the quarterly and cumulative completion totals and percentage, as well as cost information where available and reported by the utility. And you can see a snippet of this dashboard on our website in the figure on the right. The link directly below the figure will take you directly to the web page where you can find this dashboard and make use of it. And that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Coco, for sharing the details of the wildfire mitigation plans. Next slide. Now I'd like to introduce Rhonda Mayo, Program and Project Supervisor for the Safety and Enforcement Division, who will discuss the CPUC's role in wildfire investigations and compliance oversight. Ron supervises the PSPS section within the Wildfire Safety and Enforcement Branch. He started working for the CPUC back in December of 2022 after working 15.5 years with the California's Governor's Office of Emergency Services, also known as Cal OES. Ron's background experience comes from holding various emergency management positions at Cal OES Response and Planning. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ron DeMaio. I am a Program and Project Supervisor in the PSPS section of CPUC's Safety and Enforcement Division, or SCD, Wildfire Safety and Enforcement Branch, or WCB. Thank you, Coco, for the great presentation on the wildfire mitigation plans. Now, as I mentioned, I'll be presenting on CPUC wildfire investigations and PSPS compliance. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So WCB's mission statement is to regulate and enforce electrical and PSPS safety regulations and guidelines, and develop policies to protect consumers, safeguard the environment, and ensure Californians access to safe and reliable utility infrastructure and services. WCB also conducts investigations of investor-owned utility, or IOU, reported wildfires in the electric IOU's PSPS compliance. WCB is comprised of two different sections, the Wildfire Investigations section and the PSPS section. Before taking a deeper dive into each of our sections, I'll go into a little detail now about our collaboration with state agency partners and highlight a few differences. Next slide, please. The three state agencies I wanted to highlight that WCB collaborates with are the California Department of Forestry and Fire, CAL FIRE, California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, Cal OES, and Office of Energy and Infrastructure Safety, or Energy Safety. CAL FIRE is the state agency that investigates the causes of wildfires, and they conduct site visits with our WCB engineers during their CPUC wildfire investigations. Cal OES is a state agency that interfaces with county and local emergency management. And Cal OES actually created the PSPS Standard Operating Guide, which is separate from the CPUC regulations. The Cal OES PSPS Standard Operating Guide includes things like direction on cadence for holding PSPS state executive briefings, and also the IOU's process for submitting Cal OES PSPS notifications. CPUC and Cal OES also collaborate and align to provide feedback to the IOUs during and after PSPS events. Coco shared a lot of great information about energy safety and their collaboration with SPD. Energy safety collaboration with WCB actually involves their annual report on compliance, or ARC, for each of the IOU's wildfire mitigation plan. Next slide, please. So, brief overview about the wildfire investigation section. They are the section within WCB that conducts investigations of IOU reported wildfires for general order or GEO violations. And the wildfire investigation section also reviews those previously mentioned ARC, or annual reviews on compliance, for energy safety, for any compliance, and they review it for compliance and any potential IOU enforcement. Next slide, please. The below table lists the 4 general orders the wildfire investigation section reviews for compliance and any potential violations. Those are GO 95, overhead electric construction, line construction, GO 95 requirements for overhead line design, construction, and maintenance to ensure adequate service and secure safety for workers and the public, GO 128, construction of underground electric supply and communication systems, our requirements for underground electrical supply and communication system design, construction, and maintenance to ensure adequate service and secure safety for workers and the public. GO 165, inspection cycles for electric distribution facilities. Our requirements for electric distribution and transmission facilities, inspections to ensure safe and high quality electrical service. And GO 174, rules for electric substations. Our requirements for substation inspection programs in order to promote safety of workers, the public, and enable adequacy of service. Now I'll move on to discuss PSPS compliance, which my PSPS section team oversees. Next slide, please. On the slide, you'll see a list of actions performed by my team separated between actions taken during a PSPS event and actions taken after a PSPS event concludes. During PSPS events, WCB staff conducts real-time compliance monitoring of IOU PSPS activities in relation to CPUC PSPS guidelines and requirements. To do this monitoring, we stay in daily contact and communication with the IOUs. We participate in their daily IOU state executive briefings. We observe their internal staff meetings, and we also visit the IOU's emergency operations centers if needed. After a PSPS event concludes, WCB staff conduct compliance assessments for various PSPS reports, including the 10-day post-event report, annual PSPS postseason report, and annual PSPS preseason report, which in a few slides, I'll discuss these three reports in more detail. With this compliance assessment, this includes issuing data requests as needed for additional information, and we also review all party comments that are submitted. We also observe and participate in all IOU annual PSPS exercises, which are typically conducted in the March to June timeframe prior to IOUs submitting their PSPS preseason reports. And we participate in all the utilities' quarterly PSPS regional working groups. In addition, once these compliance assessments are complete, we conduct enforcement actions as needed. Next slide, please. To help better understand our workflow for PSPS compliance and enforcement, I'll walk through our PSPS compliance and enforcement flowchart you see here. Starting on the left, during a PSPS event, we conduct our real-time compliance. Once the event concludes, the IOU will submit their post-event report within 10 business days. And once the report is received, we start that compliance assessment for the report. If party comments are filed, which is typically 15 days from when the post-event report is filed, we also review those comments during this compliance assessment period. And once the assigned analyst completes that compliance review, the report is submitted to WC management for review, and determination is made if the compliance review will be closed out with a closure letter, any additional data requests are needed, or to proceed with issuing a notice of violation, or MOV. If a notice of violation is issued, typically the IOU is given 30 days to respond. And once we do receive their response, that is also reviewed and assessment is done to see if any of that information that's provided will change the status of those violations that were contained within the notice of violation. This then leads us to the enforcement decision, which comes from internal discussions within Safety Enforcement Division leadership and our CPC legal. Ultimately, the decision will be to close out, like I mentioned earlier, with a closure letter to the IOU, or the IOU will be issued a citation, or the IOU will be issued an administrative enforcement order, or AEO, or administrative consent order, or ACO. Once all the enforcement is complete, all the documents will be posted online publicly on our CPUC website, and any actions or follow-ups will continue to be conducted by our branch. For example, say an enforcement action included an IOU corrective action, those would be followed up on. Next slide, please. Now I'll go into a little bit more detail about each of the IOUs submitted PSPS reports. The first I'll talk about is the PSPS post-event reports. Again, those are submitted within 10 business days after the PSPS event ends. And it's a comprehensive PSPS post-event report that's required to demonstrate compliance with various reporting requirements, covering topics like decision-making, notifications, public safety partner engagement, lessons learned, and other topics listed there in the second bullet. Since 2018, we have 142 PSPS post-events that have been filed, and this count does include the post-event reports filed by SCE, SCG&E, and PG&E for their PSPS events that occurred in January 2025. Below, you'll see the table there of the number of reports per year and per IOU. Next slide, please. So in addition to the post-event report, the other two annual reports are the post-season report and the pre-season report. The PSPS post-season report must be filed and served for the prior year, no later than March 1st of each year via rulemaking 18-12-05. And that second bullet lists the items that are to be included in the post-season report. And the pre-season report must be filed and served in the current year, no later than July 1st of each year, also by rulemaking 18-12-005. And that fourth bullet lists the items that are to be included in the pre-season report. All these PSPS reports and PSPS data are actually available on our CPUC website, our hyperlink that's listed on the slide. Next slide, please. So actually, based on that post-event report data that we received from the PSPS post-event reports, our branch has actually created a public PSPS dashboard to view that post-event PSPS data and a GIS map with polygons to display the PSPS outage data. These are separate two functions, are separated between two tabs that you actually can toggle between. I'll talk about the dashboard over these next slides, and then I'll actually bring up the demo and bring up the dashboard so we can kind of walk through it. Below is a screenshot of the first tab of the dashboard, which is the PSPS event data since 2018. On the far left is a list of events subdivided into event name and customers de-energized per event. You can actually click on that list and it'll bring up in the middle there PSPS event details, which are data like the first data, the period of concern, the utility who initiated the PSPS event, as well as additional information like medical baseline, customers de-energized. And then on the far right, you'll see some trending charts. On the upper right hand is a trending chart or graph for the number of events each month by utility and a number of events each year by utility that you could actually toggle between via tabs. And then on the bottom right, you'll see some trending graphs for number of customers de-energized and number of customers notified with separate tabs to view that data by month and by year. Before heading to the next slide, I just want to point out on that very bottom left of the dashboard, you'll see the two tabs to actually toggle between those two separate functions I talked about. I just spoke about the event data side, which is displayed here. And then on the next slide is that event map tab. So next slide, please. So in addition to that narrative PSPS post-event report that's submitted by the IOUs, the IOUs actually also must submit a zipped geodatabase file that includes PSPS event polygons of de-energized areas. So the second tab of the CPUC public PSPS dashboard, all those submitted PSPS polygons across all the utilities are compiled into this event map. Here we have a screenshot of that second tab on the dashboard, and this tab visually displays that polygon data collected from all those PSPS post-event report de-energization data that's submitted. And if you bear with me one moment, now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and share so I can demo the PSPS dashboard. So bear with me one moment. Okay, so just wanted to highlight here, this is our main PSPS page. And here you'll see the link for the PSPS dashboard. So here's that event data side of the dashboard I was first walking through. So a couple things to point out here. There's some helpful background information here on the left side pullout that you could click on. Some introduction information here. background, some acronyms, some instructions on using the dashboard. And you can actually pin this if you'd like to have this up while you're viewing a PSPS dashboard, or if you'd like to hide it, you can go ahead and hide and unhide that section by clicking this arrow here. So again, that PSPS event data is compiled here for the event data side. Here are the different lists of events that you could click on to look at more of that specific data for each event. Here in the middle box are those event details. Again, like the IOU that had the event, the de-energization start date and restoration date, number of customers notified and de-energized, you'll find that data here. One thing to point out is from the standardization of the post-event report template back in October of 2021, this actually resulted in the IOUs providing more comprehensive PSPS post-event reporting information than what was previously required. So these additionally required data fields are reflected in this dashboard, as you noticed after the events since October of 2021. All the events will have data fields after customers de-energized filled out, which are all these fields down here, like number of customers canceled scope, transmission circuits de-energized, any damage or hazards. And if you go to an event that's prior to October of 2021, you'll see that that information after customers de-energized is left blank. So wanted to point out here that this is not a live dashboard or map. You know, it is updated following an IOU's filing of the post-event reports, or if there's any updates from, say, a post-season report or a data request that updates any of the post-event data, we'll go ahead and update the dashboard. On the right here are those trending graphs and charts that I mentioned that you can toggle between, right here for the number of events per month and year, or on the bottom, number of customers de-energized per month, year, or notified per month and year. You can find some filtering up here at the top to go by event, by IUU, or if you want to look at a specific date range, you can input that data here. Wanted to highlight that if you do filter by utility, you'll see that the trending chart will actually update just based on that utility. So we set that here. And I recommend if you do look at these trending charts, what you can actually do is also, you can go ahead and maximize just that portion of the dashboard. If you click on this icon on the upper right of the box, so that will maximize it to full screen. And you can actually look at some of the tooltip information that pops up. It's a bit easier to see once you have that maximized just for that trending chart. Right, here again, bottom left again with the two tabs, event data and event map. I'll click on the event map tab. So again, this is the consolidation of all those GIS files submitted by the IOUs into one layer that you're actually able to query and find out if any addresses are within a previous PSPS de-energized area represented by one of those polygons. When the IOUs submit their PSPS post-event report GIS files, each event file contains multiple polygons, which is more equivalent to circuit level data. The issue with that is that the field names are different between the IOUs, between each of the IOUs, and different per event. So it's not efficient to just merge all that and data into a single layer while retaining that original data. So we've simplified that process and decided to just use the utilities polygon for the de-energized data. But we've merged all of those events into a single file and actually just created new field names for the layer and populated the data from the PSPS event reports. So that consolidated PSPS map is also published to ArcGIS Online, or AGOL, as a feature file data source. And a few things to point out here on this event map side is, again, there's some filtering up at the top. All these events are since that standardization of that PSPS report template, so that's why it's since October 2021. But we do include all events, even those without de-energization polygons. As you'll see here, when you click on number of events, we have actually included the number of customers de-energized for those events, and you'll see that even the ones without customers de-energized will be listed. As part of that event name here, as you're looking at each of these events, and if you actually click on and choose one of these events, it'll zoom in to those de-energized polygons for that event. On the left side here is that helpful kind of introduction background information. One thing I just wanted to point out here is that we did create a shared inbox to address any questions regarding this PSPS dashboard, and that email address here at the bottom, PSPS event dashboards at cpuc.ca.gov. I'll stop here and we can resume the presentation. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. So before moving on, here's a slide with some of that summary information that I've talked about our public PSPS dashboard. One thing I wanted to talk about is that our typical timeline for updating the dashboard is subject to an accuracy check. What that means, if the IOU's report or CPUC files are not following our template or include some inconsistent data, we'll actually ask the IOU to correct and refile that information, which extends our timeline for completing the updates to the dashboard. Next slide, please. So next, I'd like to walk through some timeline examples for a wildfire investigation and also a PSPS compliance timeline. The timeline here on this slide you'll see is for PG&E's Dixie Fire Administrative Consent Order, Resolution SCD-8. That first step is PG&E filed the Utilities Safety and Reliability Branch, or USRB, report online. And that's starting on the left side here for the first parts of that investigation. IOU is actually required to report electric and generation facility incidents to the Commission within 2 hours if an incident occurred during business hours, or within 4 hours if an incident occurred after hours. Some of that criteria for triggering some of those reporting, for the wildfires, it could be, say, fatality or injury involving electric facilities, property damage under 2,000, any significant media coverage, or if something prompted a government agency to investigate, the utility would submit that USRB report online. So once that USRB incident report is filed, an engineer is assigned to conduct an investigation, and the following actions were performed before the investigation report was completed. So the WCB engineer conducted site visits. PG&E filed their 20-day report, which was reviewed by the engineer. Witnesses were interviewed, evidence was examined, and data requests were submitted to PG&E. And once those responses were reviewed, also third-party records were also reviewed. The engineer completed their investigation report and submitted that report to WC management for review. And that completes that first third of that timeline. And then moving into the initial enforcement actions, you'll actually see highlighted in yellow there, typical enforcement action steps that happen in the investigation process, which are a notice of violation is sent to PG&E or utility with a 30-day response due date, and then the utility or PG&E would have their response submitted for their NOV response, and that would be reviewed by that lead engineer. But for this enforcement, the Dixie Fire, the decision was actually made to go straight into settlement discussions But just wanted to highlight on that timeline that those are the typical enforcement actions. The NOV would be sent and that response will be reviewed. So going straight into the settlement discussion, the settlement talks between CPUC and PG&E were completed, and then that administrative consent order was drafted. Draft resolution SCD8 was then developed and sent out for the 30-day comment period. The comments that were submitted from this were reviewed by WCB and CPUC legal. And then our legal completed edits to resolution SCD8, and then eventually SCD8 was approved by the commissioners during a CPUC voting meeting. And then finally, our Safety Enforcement Division, our WCB branch, any follow-up on the terms of that settlement were completed afterwards. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next on the timeline here is you'll see is a PSPS compliance timeline for PG&E's 2021 PSPS Events Administrative Consent Order, Resolution SCD-12. So walking through that initial first third of the timeline, once PG&E completed their PSPS event, they filed a post-event report within 10 business days. And then our PSPS compliance review is initiated with an analyst being assigned. And then eventually, as that review is being done, party comments are submitted within 15 days of that post-event report being filed. And then all those comments are reviewed, and any data requests that need to be sent to PG&E, if needed, based on that initial review, are sent. And then once those data reports come back, those responses are also reviewed. The analysts will then submit their completed initial compliance review to WCA management for review. And that is per PSPS event. So that initial compliance review process repeated for each of PG&E's PSPS post-event reports in 2021. And then once all those were completed, following the end of the 2021 PSPS event season, an annual compliance review was completed. And then based on that annual review, PG&E was sent a notice of violation for their 2021 PSPS events, and they were given 30 days to respond. That notice of violation response from PG&E was assessed and completed, and then a settlement talks began between CPUC and PG&E. Once the settlement talks between CPUC and PG&E were completed, the administrative consent order was drafted, and then draft resolution SCD-12 was then developed and sent out for a 30-day comment period. These comments were reviewed by WCB and CPUC legal. Our legal completed edits to SCD-12, and then SCD-12 was approved by the commissioners during a CPUC voting meeting. These full administrative consent orders can be found on our public CPUC enforcement and citations webpage. And next slide, please. That completes my presentation. Here's my contact information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for that informative presentation and demonstration on the CPUC's public PSPS dashboard. Next slide. I'd like to point out additional resources. On the CPUC's website, you can find links to resources such as maps, such as power outage maps and high fire threat district map, consumer protections for wildfire victims, and links to our wildfire staff investigations and utility incident reports. You can also let us know about public safety issues related to the utilities we regulate by filing a complaint on our website. Next slide. Thank you again to our presenters, Coco Tomasian and Ron DeMaio, for your detailed explanations of the CPUC's role in wildfires. Today, we heard about the process of wildfire mitigation plans, including utility responsibilities, regulatory requirements, and the Commission's role in overseeing their implementation. along with the CPUC process of evaluating and overseeing public safety power shutoffs and our public website for tracking PSPS events. If you have any questions about these topics or other CPUC related issues, please feel free to contact your local government and community liaison. We hope you found today's webinar informative. Thank you.